Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Yeah.
The views expressed by J. Michael McCoy are the views of the hosts and guests of Max World Live, and not necessarily the views of Webcast One Live, its staff, its management, the cleaning crew, Dave the electric guy, the guy who cleans the skywalk, the woman who brought in the cookies, the management staff of Hubble Real Estate, the parking lot attendant at Keck Parking, the wait staff over at Miss Kitty's, the coffee crew at Frederick's, the man in the street corner willing to work for food, Rob Spearman, Max Crabb, or anyone else of sound mind. Should you be offended, provoked, intimidated, shocked, confused, or just made to think independently, log on to MaxWorldLive.com right now. It's your voice we want to hear in Max World. And now, live from the palatial studios of Webcast One Live, your host, J. Michael McCoy.
Good afternoon, 4 minutes after the hour on this Tuesday, the 13th of May in the Lord's year 2014. I'm J. Michael McCoy, and this is the Tuesday edition of Max World Live with Tom Coates. And if you have a grandchild, if you know somebody who's getting ready to put their son or daughter through college, if you are a parent who one day, hey, Chris Roloff, even though your beautiful daughter's less than 5, this show is for you. I have the CEO of the Iowa Student Loan Company, is that right?
Iowa Student Loan Liquidity Corp.
Liquidity Corp. Steve McCullough. And we're going to learn some fascinating things today. You're going to get some tips on educating your child in college that I was blown away when he told me. I love the one about, what's the one about the art? You said, why would a student get a degree in art management or something?
Well, different degrees have different salaries attached to them and different job availabilities. So you've got to be really careful what you're going to major in college to make sure it's going to pay off for you.
Yeah, and just stuff I never thought of. And with today's debt in college loans being surmountable, I think it's time we talked about this. And when I talk about money, there's no better banana than Tom Coates to get in here, because nobody understands money better than Tom Coates McDuck. And nobody counts his gold better than he does. So I'm curious to listen. But anyway, Steve, welcome very, very much, and thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for having me.
So tell me what you do.
Well, Iowa Student Loan is a private nonprofit company. We're based in West Des Moines. We've been helping people with student loans since 1982, helping people finance college. Now we've got about 345 employees, and we work with over 650,000 borrowers, helping them get their student loans repaid. And part of our mission as an organization is to try and help people understand the economics of college. As a general rule, you shouldn't borrow any more for college than your average starting salary. And that's one of the things we try to preach to everyone that will listen, so they don't get themselves in a bad situation where they borrowed too much and they can't afford to pay it back.
Yeah. Now, Tom, you must see a lot of people come in with debt in student loans, which, as I understand it, is not dischargeable.
Nearly all of it is not. Mac, again, we've got the guy with the numbers here, but roughly 85% of the student loans in this country are federally insured, and in very few circumstances are they dischargeable in bankruptcy. In fact, that is part of the problem, and the fact that they have grown so quickly in size and scope in the last year or so is the first time ever that the student loan debt in this country actually surpassed the credit card debt. We bumped, just before the bubble burst in '08, we bumped right at about $1 trillion in credit card debt. Credit card debt's backed off now, where it's between like 700-800 million, or billion. Got to get my figures right. The student loans are well north of $1 trillion now. And there's a lot of problems here, Steve. You know, you and I worked together for years on some of these issues, and you know, one of the numbers I picked up from you or the guys over at ICANN was that 40% of the students that head in to college don't actually get out of there with a degree, much less a degree that you're pointing to and that I point to too. Get a degree that there's market demand for. They don't get any degree. So what are they doing with the thousands, in some cases tens of thousands of dollars in student loan debt they've run up without even a degree to show for it?
That's kind of our worst case scenario.
Mm-hmm.
We have people that are borrowing a lot of money to go to college, and if you drop out and you don't get the credential, then usually you don't have that increased economic wherewithal so you can afford to pay back your student loans. So not only did you not graduate, you didn't necessarily get a college-level job, but you still have to pay back all the debt that you incurred. So that's one of the things that we're trying to avoid as often as possible with people. You know, once you start, you have to do everything you can to stay in and finish if you've started to borrow money to pay for it.
Steve, one of the charts that I show on a PowerPoint presentation that I give from time to time, I've incorporated more and more things about the student loans because it is an increasing amount of the debt and the problem debt that people are trying to deal with. And one of the things I show them is a chart that goes back 100 years. And back in the early part of the 20th century, 2 to 3% of the population of this country went on and got any college. By the time I was in school back in the early 70s, it was a little over 30% of the students that got out of high school that went and got any college at all. And in more recent years, it's been 70%. And I've told some of the, and I talked to a high school group just a few weeks ago. I said, you know, some people have told you that you're not going to be worth anything unless you go out and get your college degree. I said 70% of the people sitting in this classroom should not go on to college, just from a statistical standpoint. There are many good blue-collar jobs, factory jobs, all types of construction jobs that are going wanting in this country. They're given scholarships. Some of these people, I met with, Mac, you know Brian Leach.
Yeah.
I met with him, and they're crying for some of their people. Some of those people can make upwards of $100,000 a year in income without the college degree, with the proper training and everything. And many people are never meant to be going to college, and yet they're told by their teachers and their peers that you got to go to college. That's why I think 40% of them are dropping out. And the cost now, you can index it for inflation, Steve. We can talk about this, but I think in the last 20 years, you've seen a 440% increase in the cost of higher education when indexed for inflation. When I went to school, you know, I went and I spray painted during the summer. Made $5,000 a year on a spray painting
Graffiti
crew.
artist?
Painted houses and barns, Mac.
Oh, okay.
That was how I got through college. We paid $100 a month for rent once I got married in '74 to my wife. And my college cost $2,000 a year. You know, I went to private school, Simpson College. You can't do that today. So I cash flowed everything out of my summer earnings. You can't do that today. Talk about some of those types of pressures that are on these young people.
Well, we like to tell people that they should still work and pay for as much of their college as they can. So even if you're just working, say, a minimum wage job,
right?
Most students can handle working at least 17 hours a week while they're in school. And then if you work full-time during the summer, you can earn maybe $9,000 that you can put toward your college. Now, that won't pay for it all, but it's that much less borrowing that you have to do.
Yeah.
One of the things that disturbs me is there's kind of a social norm where a lot of students in college now are saying, I'm not going to work. I'm going to enjoy the college experience, and I'm going to study more, and I'm going to do these things. My personal
Which means
experience,
partying more.
My personal experience says that when you have extra time on your hands in college, it's not always a good thing.
No.
As a matter of fact, studies have proven that if you don't work more than 20 hours a week, you actually get better grades than if you didn't work at all. Yeah. So there's a lot to be said for working while you're in college, and I just hope that everybody realizes that it's still something that you should do. It's the responsible thing to do to help pay for your own college and put some of your own money in it. So you understand if you skip a class, that's your money that you're wasting because you didn't take advantage of what you were paying for.
Exactly right. And then there are other ways, like, you know, you can pick up some credits in the early years at some of the junior colleges where you're perhaps, you know, you're working a lot, you're picking up credits there that'll transfer fully on into the 4-year degree. You can pick up college credits in high school even.
Right.
There are ways, you mentioned some and I've mentioned some others, that you can hold these costs down. What's the average amount of student loan debt in this country that for the graduating person with a 4-year BA degree, what are they getting? What's their average amount of debt in this country now?
The average is right at $29,600.
Is that for this state?
That's the most recent national average, and in Iowa, we're right at the national average. Unfortunately, in Iowa, we've got the 6th highest average student loan debt in the country.
Heard that.
Now, there's some reasons for that. In Iowa, we're typically middle income. If you look at the amount that people typically earn, unfortunately, one of the worst positions you can be at in terms of being family income going to college is middle income. If you're low income, you can get Pell Grants. If you're high income, you can afford to pay out of pocket. But if you're middle income, unfortunately, many parents end up having to borrow, and many students end up having to borrow to pay for it. And that's kind of the demographic that we live in here in this state. Our colleges aren't high cost compared to those in other states. As a matter of fact, they're fairly economical. But when you combine the other economic factors in the state, and the amount of people that are making and the amount that they're able to save to pay for college, we end up borrowing an awful lot of money in this state to pay for college. And it's something that makes it so that we have to be all the more cognizant of the fact that that means if you're going to borrow for college, you've got to line yourself up so that you do well in college and you can get a job when you graduate so you can afford to pay back those loans.
Now, Tom, you said something earlier that we have a higher debt ratio on student loans than we've ever had before.
Yes.
Why?
Well, I think part of it is clearly that the cost for the hour, in the university or in the private school is been unresponsive to the market. Part of this is the accessibility that the government has given to so many people to borrow. I think part of it, comes from a political standpoint, Mac. I do believe that, they'll scream about the cost increases in medical because many of the people that are involved in medical don't support the Democratic Party,
right? And
much of the high percentage of the people in the college and university ranks are Democrats, and I think there is a Democratic component to the unresponsive nature. I mentioned 440% increase in a period of the last couple of decades, indexed for inflation. That outstrips anything that we're looking at. Over $1 trillion in student loan debt, 85% of it federally insured and non-dischargeable. You can discharge credit card debt. You got a collection agency after you from an old medical bill, you can get out from under that. A deficiency balance on a house or a car, but you cannot discharge federally insured student loan debt under almost any circumstances that you encounter.
Why not?
Because
why is that debt
Steve,
different?
Why don't you answer that question?
There was a problem back in the early 80s where loans were dischargeable. And frankly, there were some students that were taking advantage of that. There was a tendency that people would graduate and then they would file bankruptcy immediately to get out from underneath their debt. So like many things, unfortunately, it was abused. And because of that, they were closing a loophole when they tried to do that. Currently, the only way you can get your loan discharged in bankruptcy, but you have to show a hardship, an extreme hardship, and that's up to a judge to determine that. It doesn't happen very often because what they'll do is they'll relieve you of all your other debt, and then they'll see if you have the capacity to pay that student loan. And many times what we find is people that are struggling with student loans, it's not their only debt.
Yeah.
It's unfortunately a situation where they have many creditors that they're trying to satisfy, and we may be one of them. We try and work with them as best as we can to help them make a budget, figure out what they can afford to do without so they can make payments, not just on their student loan, but all their other debt. Unfortunately, some of them are beyond our ability to help, and those are the folks that we send over to see Tom because there's only so much we can do. But I can tell you that in terms of trying to work with borrowers, do everything we can to try and help them, we do that. We offer private student loans as well as we service loans for the federal government now. In those private student loans, we try and do the best we can for borrowers when they run into trouble. The reason is if they go bad on that loan, it's a pure loss to us.
Yeah.
So we try and work out
A lot of times
arrangements
you get a
with them.
cosigner on those loans, wouldn't
Right. We almost always have a cosigner when we make loans now. And so we'll work with the cosigner, which is usually a parent, sometimes a grandparent. But what it enables us to do is bring the group together and say, okay, how can we try and make this work and what can we do?
Steve McCullough is our guest today. He is the CEO of the Iowa Student Loan Liquidity Corporation. I'm going to get that wrong. So
You can just call us Iowa Student Loan.
Okay. Coming up next, you've got a grandson, granddaughter, a child, somebody in the family who wants to be blank. but they'll never get the money back if they borrow it. That and more next.
Across America, there are countless numbers of people struggling with addiction and other life-controlling issues. Probably someone you know and love. There is a way out. There is hope. Transformations Treatment Center in Delray Beach, Florida, has a unique approach to substance abuse treatment. Call now and ask about our Guaranteed Success program or log on to transformationstreatment.com. Transformations. Change your life. Change your relationships. Transform your world.
Get away from us, you mean old credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Help! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit! You're our hero!
Yes, now your favorite programs on Webcast One Live can all be watched and listened to on any Android or Apple device. Your phone, tablet, or iPad. Yes, your favorite shows on Webcast One Live are available live or on podcast wherever you go. Let me introduce to you some of our great shows.
Shalom! Every week on Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman, we'll talk about issues in the Middle East, issues related to the Jewish tradition and religious traditions in general, and keep you up to date on exactly what's going on around the world. You may know some of the story, but you haven't heard all of the story until you've heard it on Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman and our special guests we have on every week.
Hey, this is Doc with Doc and Lefty. I want to tell you about our brand new time slot. It's from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. It's on the same night, Tuesdays. We now follow Ed Fallon and the Fallon Forum on webcast1live.com. I want to tell you a little bit about our show. Our show is focused on local, state, and national, and sometimes international politics. We like to keep people updated and informed. We also have very interesting guests. So please join us every Tuesday from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. on webcast1live.com.
So when you want to watch your favorite Webcast One program, remember, there's an app for that. You know, there's an app for that.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
21 minutes after the hour on the 13th day of May in the Lord's year 2014. I'm J. Michael McCoy. Tomorrow, a special edition of Mac's World with Tom Coates, Tom Hofling. And if that name doesn't ring a bell, he's going to be on your ballot in a couple of weeks. In fact, 2 weeks from today, or 3 weeks. 3 weeks from today, he's primarying Terry Branstad. He wants to be the governor of the state of Iowa. And I bet you didn't even know that Branstad had opposition. Is he somebody you want to vote for? Don't have time to stand in line and go to a rally? Listen to the show tomorrow, 3 to 4, The View from a Pew with Tom Coates and I, and we'll introduce you to Tom Hofling. Steve McCullough is our guest today. He's the CEO of the Iowa Student Loan Company. And give me an idea of some degrees that people could go after that there's no way they're ever going to make enough money to make it worth what they invested to get the education.
Well, it all depends on how much you end up borrowing. I mean, Tom will back me up on this. How much you can afford to borrow depends on how much you're going to make. It's called a debt-to-income ratio.
Exactly.
But in our circumstance, unfortunately, people will start college with no idea how much they're going to end up paying and borrowing. And then, unfortunately, even more unfortunately, many of them don't know what they want to major in or what job might be attached to that. So it's really hard for them to understand from the get-go whether they're going to be borrowing an affordable amount or not.
Why shouldn't they be counseled at the outset? I know you're on a campaign, you've been on one for a while to do that. Why shouldn't they be counseled by somebody in the high school level, by somebody early on with this very thing? As you say, the debt-to-income ratio, the opportunity cost of you know, these people that are getting these degrees in social studies majors that they apparently enjoy come out with $40,000, $50,000 in student loan debt and can't find a job. And that's why they're working down at McDonald's or the coffee shop, because they can't find anything in that field. Why isn't there some requirement for that kind of counseling before they head into this major financial commitment?
I want to be a smart aleck for just a second, and then you can answer the question. You're asking for responsible public government education.
Yes, that would be nice, Mac. They say, thank God we don't get the government we pay for. But at least with all the bureaucrats running around looking for work to do, somebody ought to come up with a requirement that before all of these young people head into college, they understand what they're getting into. Much of that 40% that drops out without a degree could probably be headed off if they would properly assess what it's going to cost them and what their opportunities are.
I don't disagree with you, but yeah, I have one child. I have 4 children, but I have one child that would not listen to any sense. And they went out and got student loans. Well, I wouldn't, and her mother would not sign for them. So she got her grandfather to sign for them. Well, guess what happened when she drops out and doesn't have a degree and has no way to make those loans? It goes back to Grandpa. And Grandpa calls me and says, hey, you're the father here. And I said, hey, Grandpa, why do you think I didn't sign him in the first place? I knew she wouldn't finish college. I knew she was just running up bills. And as a parent, I feel bad that my child did that. But if you've ever been the child, if you've ever been the parent of a strong-willed child, when they hit 18, they know they're 18. Mm-hmm. You can't do anything about it. And your company and companies like that don't require my approval, right?
Well, what we're doing right now is for anyone that takes out one of our private student loans, they have to go through a financial literacy tool.
Good.
And this tool, it's called the Student Loan Game Plan. It requires them to project what their total debt's going to be. They have to tell us what their major is, and then we tell them what their starting salary is going to be and calculate their debt-to-income ratio.
Okay, good.
And we tell them right there and then whether they're going to be in trouble or not, based on what their plans are and how much they're going to borrow. Good. And then after that, we say, but there's something you can do about it. And then we give them lots of advice on how they can live more frugally, how they can work and make some money to help pay for college so they don't have to borrow so much. Most recently, one of our local colleges did a study, and they determined that fully 1/3 of the amount of student borrowing that was being done was discretionary, to the point it's the living expenses while you're on campus. Mm-hmm. You have choices to make about that. You can choose which type of dorm you're going to live in, how much it's going to cost, which meal plan you're going to be on, how much you're going to spend on entertainment and other things that you can still include in your borrowing amount. But if you think about that, if you can truly control that 1/3, you can lower the amount that you're borrowing by the choices that you make. So we're trying to educate people about that. And in terms of our loans, they're required to go through this.
Good.
We have a second tool for parents, and it's to empower parents that are going to co-sign, and it tells them the things that they should be talking to their students about. It's got different tools incorporated in it. One of it's called a college lifestyle audit. And it encourages a hard conversation to occur between the parent and the student, where the parent says, if I'm going to co-sign on this loan, I'm going to talk to you about how the proceeds are going to be spent. Do you really need to live in that nice of a dorm? Could you have an additional roommate? All these other things that you could do to spend less money, why aren't you doing them? Because if that parent signs on that loan, they're responsible if the student can't pay for it. They have a right to ask those questions of the student since they're helping pay for it.
Yes. Yes, you're right. I don't care if they're, like Max said, 18 or not. If you've got the, if you got the carrot or the stick out there, and in this case the carrot, you ought to be able to get that mule to move in the direction that you want to. What percent of the lending market does Iowa student loan liquidity account for in the state of Iowa for this area?
Well, right now the vast majority of all the loans are being made by the federal government. So, and it's about the statistics that you're saying about 85% of the loans nationally, 85% of the loans made in Iowa are made directly by the federal government. Okay. And as far as the educational tools attached to those loans, there are some. They are more generally available and more generally used. We've tried to come up with some very targeted, specific tools that are very hard-hitting. If you look at our student loan game plan, the first thing it says is meet this individual. And listen to what happened to them. They're now living in their parents' basement, working 3 part-time jobs to try and make their student loan payments. Don't let this be you.
Yeah.
And it's all determined by the choices that you make before and during college. It will determine whether this is your outcome or not. So here are the things you need to do to create a good outcome for yourself. One of the most important things they need to do is take a real close look at what they're thinking about studying, what their major is going to be, if there's jobs available for that major, and how much they can earn in that major, in that field of study. Unfortunately, a lot of times people will make choices about their major based on what their interests are,
right,
or how well they do in a particular topic in school. Well, just because we can all get an A in sociology doesn't mean we should major in sociology, right? Just because we have a real interest in, say, marine biology doesn't mean we should all be marine biologists. If there aren't jobs available there, or if those jobs aren't going to pay enough to be able to afford to pay back my student loan. So, there is a role for, obviously, we hope everybody does something that they're passionate about. We hope their job doesn't seem like work because they love it so much, and that's all good. But the very practical element here is if you're going to have to borrow to pay for your college, you have to be able to earn enough to pay it back. And you have to take that into consideration when you're making those choices.
Steve McCullough is our guest today. He's the CEO of Iowa Student Loan. Why we have not yet once talked about the responsibility that the educational institutions have. Why isn't it their responsibility to say, little miss, don't become a art specialist if you need to make over $35,000 a year because you won't make it. And therefore, we're not going to loan you more than $35,000 on your education.
Part of it is because of the way that the current student loan program is structured. Right now, in the federal student loan program, you can borrow $31,000 cumulatively. And that money is made available to anyone that's going to college. Part of it is subsidized. You have to basically be a less income family to be able to afford that. But anybody can borrow now while they're in college, and they can borrow up to the cost of attendance through the PLUS loans that are available to parents. So the borrowing is an entitlement, and it's generally available up to $31,000 on the federal programs. Well, I've got news for you. Not all majors have jobs attached that make $31,000. Right. But the point is, the current federal policy is an across-the-board, one-size-fits-all policy with one set of loan limits, regardless of what you're majoring in or anything else. It's the way our current policy is set up. Now, I can tell you about one real positive story. Right here in Des Moines at Grandview College, they've come up with a new program. And this is because their president, Kent Henning, is very passionate about these same topics. And what he did is he came up with a program where that college will guarantee that they're not going to raise your tuition more than 2% the entire time you're there if you'll sign on and make some pledges. They tell you what they project you're going to borrow the whole time. They work with you on career counseling so you know how much you're going to make. And if you'll do the things you're supposed to do to graduate on time and get good grades, they'll make the guarantee that they're not going to raise your tuition more than 2%. It's an amazing program, and again, it's turning it around, and that's one college, as an example, that's really taken responsibility for doing this type of counseling.
Well, that's fantastic.
With students, and it's a wonderful prototype. I hope it catches on.
Yeah, I'm hoping that sets the stage. Now, some of these institutions are getting into some trouble because their default rates are higher than they should be. What happens to an institution, maybe it's a trade school, maybe it's a small private school, that has a very high default rate on these federally insured student loans? What happens to them then?
Well, they have to have a default rate as much as 30% for 3 years in a row before there are sanctions placed on them. They may be declared ineligible for federal aid after that point. That's pretty high hurdle.
Or the college?
The college.
College.
And that's a pretty high hurdle. I mean, it's
so
not.
You think it ought to be tougher than that?
Not very many colleges are kicked out based on that.
So you're saying they're too laxed on their buddies in the area of academia, and they really ought to be more exacting.
Well, let's just put it this way. Most of the colleges in the country are not the problem. There are some colleges that you've really got to look out for. Not all colleges that are for-profit colleges are bad colleges either, but there are some. And in particularly that segment is the one that tends to charge a lot of money, and not all students are graduating. So you've got to be particularly careful when you look at that segment of colleges. Senator Harkin has been one that's really been on that bandwagon, trying to tell everybody, be careful what college you choose, because there's some that aren't necessarily good deals. And
do we have some of those in Iowa?
Luckily in Iowa, we don't have very many for-profit colleges. We never have had. It just has not been a situation in the state where we've had that many.
So a private college is not necessarily a for-profit college?
No, most of the private colleges in this state are nonprofits.
Okay.
And, they're fine institutions. They've been here for a long time. They do great work. Just to help them out a bit, let me just say this. A lot of times you look at what their sticker price is to go to that college and you think, oh, that's really expensive. But they've got institutional scholarships and everything else they apply, and it may be that it costs you less to go to one of those schools than one of the private or one of the four-year Regents institutions. The other thing they got going for them is they have very good 4-year graduation rates. Now, another way that you can borrow a lot more money and spend a lot more money is if you take 5 or 6 years to go through a 4-year course of study.
Well, and some of this comes down to the student, too. I mean, let's say it's a student that should be going to college, but he might thrive very well in a large university atmosphere like University of Iowa or Iowa State, where others wouldn't, and perhaps they need a smaller, less intimidating environment for some of them, like maybe the ones like Buena Vista, Simpson, Central, you name it.
Well, what I advise people to do is to apply for multiple colleges and get that award letter back and see how much it's really going to cost to attend there. And then also take other things in consideration about, is it a good fit? Is it a good environment? What I'll tell you, though, is hopefully before they've done any of that, they've already done some career planning and they've already focused on what they think they want to major in. Because what they should be doing is looking at the school that has a very good program and a very good placement rate for the major they're interested in, because that's the real goal that they need to stay focused on.
Hey, Mom and Dad, Grandma, Grandpa, are you listening to this? This is important. Your 16, 17-year-old kid or grandchild doesn't get this. They think it's all free. They think they're entitled to an education. But you're the one that's entitled to the payment if they mess up. More from Steve McCullough, CEO of Iowa Student Loans, and Tom Coates when we come back live here on KTIA Iowa, 99.3 FM.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershot.
I'm administrative manager.
I am the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
If we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, it's your home.
It's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're going to do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's going to be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're going to do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money-back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you going to say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're going to be listening. They're going to want to know what your challenges are. Then they're going to come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me. But is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
.22 before the top Salem Radio Network news, and then Pastor Michael Mudloff with Westkirk Presbyterian Church and True Blue. As I said earlier, Tom Coates and I will interview Tom Hoefling tomorrow. You may not know that name, but you're going to see it on a ballot in a couple weeks. Tom is the alternative on the conservative side to Governor Terry Branstad. And Tom wants to be your governor. He's from Calhoun County, and you'll learn a lot about him tomorrow. That's a special edition, A View from the Pew, 3 to 4 on Wednesday. Reich Place just has the week off. His wife has not been feeling well, so he took the time off, as a good husband should, to spend time with his wife at home. So we'll take care of Wednesday and Thursday.
Let's preview our show next week, too, Mac. We're going to have Schneider.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've got Senator Schneider going to come on the show and kind of give us a wrap-up of what went on in the Iowa Senate this year.
Yeah, I always like him. I always like him when he comes on.
Good fellow from the metro area.
Yep. He's your guy, right?
No, but I like him. I've known him since he first got in.
He's my guy.
And we're from where?
In West Des Moines.
West Des Moines, okay.
Yep.
All right, good. Good. Yeah, we had him on. Didn't we have him on?
We've had him on once before. And
wasn't he running at that time?
I think he had just gotten elected.
Okay,
he was
maybe
rookie.
so.
He's been there a couple of years now, and I invited him on. He said, wait till after the session's over, and then we'll come in and wrap it up.
Okay.
So.
All right, good. Our guest today is Steve McCullough. He is the CEO of the Iowa Student Loan Company, and we're talking. I hope you appreciate this, because I know I do. Now, I can't help my kids anymore. My youngest is 28, and my oldest is almost 40. But, I've got a grandson who's 16 years old this year, and I've got another grandson who's 14 years old this year. And I've already started to talk to them about their performance in junior high and high school will determine the amount of scholarships that they're able to get. Now, it's a little tough for my 14-year-old grandson to embrace yet. College. But Alex, my oldest grandson, luckily is smart enough to know he's just 3 years away from going to college. And it'd be really great if mom and dad didn't have to A, sign for it, or B, pay for it. And most importantly, it'd be great if he didn't have to pay for it. But that's not easy nowadays. In fact, it's getting tougher and tougher and tougher. The question I asked you earlier about institutions taking responsibility for some of these kids that get all these bills, talk to me like I'm a 6-year-old, which means I'm really ignorant on this subject. What's the difference between private and public colleges? Because I thought private colleges were for profit, but you say no, most of them are not for profit.
No, there's really 4 different segments that you can think about, particularly here in this state. One is our 2-year community colleges, and they're great options for everybody, including people that want to go to a 4-year school. To start there for 2 years, you can pay less for your first 2 years of college and then transfer to a 4-year college.
You don't think about DMAC, but doesn't DMAC have more students than any institution in the state?
They've got a very high enrollment, and they've got really good programs. As a matter of fact, they just started an honors program now. So some of the sharpest students in central Iowa are considering going to DMAC to be in that honors program. So fine institutions and fine programs. Then we also have our big 3 Regents institutions that we're all familiar with. And then you've got a host of private nonprofit colleges in this state. Iowa has a rich tradition of having 4-year private colleges that are available for people in communities all over the state. And very high academic standards, very good programs. Then, in addition to those, you have some for-profit colleges that are private for-profit colleges, some of which are traditional career colleges.
Would it be like AIB as an example?
Well, AIB is a nonprofit.
Oh, are they? Okay.
And
well, name us a for-profit, Steve.
Would be Ashford University in Clinton is the biggest, actually now one of the bigger institutions in the country. They have some programs that are very good programs, and they actually have some programs for folks that are very high academic performers, where they'll give them scholarships to attend. So again, for-profit doesn't necessarily mean bad, but I'll tell you, no matter what college you're going to go to, you need to go with a purpose, and you need to know why you're going there, what you're wanting to get out of it. You've got to have a target of what job you want to try and get when you graduate.
Yeah.
If for no other reason, to know why you're there. I mean, there's going to be a time when you're going to be in a class and it is really hard, and maybe you don't perform very well on a test. Well, how are you going to respond to that? If you know what you're there for and you have your eye on the prize of what you're trying to achieve, you're gonna forbear, you're gonna persevere, you're gonna be determined to overcome that. If you don't really know why you're there or what your outcome is gonna be, it's a lot harder to stick to it and power through that when you come up against adversity.
I've heard some criticism leveled at some of these beauty schools, these beauty colleges. Are they kind of a higher risk category than some of what you're talking about?
Again, it's a matter of looking at what you're going to pay for and the debt you might incur to get it versus what you're going to make when you get out.
And you're saying you shouldn't invest more in college than you'll make the first year in compensation.
You shouldn't borrow more than you're going to make your first year of college or first year out of college. Mm-hmm. It just so happens that equates to about an 8 to 10% debt to income ratio, which the government has said they believe is an affordable amount. Okay. So they gave us a guideline. So what we've done is we've come up with another tool that we've got out there called Return on College Investment.
Okay.
And it's on our website, studentloan.org. If you go to that website, studentloan.org, pretty easy to remember, click on Educational Tools, you'll see our student loan game plan, and you'll see the Return on College Investment. We call it ROCKY for short.
Okay.
That allows you to say, I'm thinking about majoring in this. Now, what jobs, if any, are attached to that major? How many jobs are projected to be available? And what's the average starting salary of those jobs? So it kind of gives you the lay of the land to know if this is what I'm thinking about majoring in, what jobs are attached to that and what might I make? Well, if you know that and you know what you might make when you graduate, you can use that guideline to make sure you don't borrow any more than that while you're in college so you don't get in trouble.
Steve McCullough is our guest, CEO of the Iowa Student Loan. Can you give me a couple of examples of those degrees that just simply do not pay off? You simply cannot borrow enough money to where you'll ever get it back?
Well, again, if mom and dad are willing to pay for the whole thing and you don't have to borrow, then it doesn't matter,
sure,
right? Because you don't have loan payments to make. So, I mean, let's clarify. We're talking to people that are having to borrow to go to college. They have to be wiser consumers because they're going to have that burden to pay it back. But if you're going to have to borrow, then you have to worry about what you're going to make.
Yeah.
There are some majors that typically don't make as much money. And a lot of them have to do with arts, like studio arts. You hear people joking about being a starving artist. Well, I've got a clue. That's really not fun if you've got student loans.
Yeah.
There's nothing romantic about being a starving artist with student loan payments to make. There are other degrees that tend to lead to very well-paying jobs, and they just happen to be the STEM degrees. It's engineering, in particular, mathematics. In general, STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math.
Right.
And people look at that and say, yeah, but that's really hard. It's hard to pass those classes, yes, but you get better jobs and you get more money when you do.
They were easy, everybody be in them, and then they wouldn't pay anything.
So, I mean, the general rule of thumb, it's worth it. And this is what I'll tell all those kids out there that are in high school right now. Do the math, do the science. Yeah, it's hard, but if you want a good paying job in the future, it's worth it. You got to put in the hard work if you're going to get the reward.
Now, you said a minute ago that we have starving artists, and that doesn't work, and very rarely can they pay back their loan. What is the authority of the federal government or the institution or you to go after that person and garnish or lien, or, I mean, what can you do? Can you do the same thing on a car loan or a house loan or a credit card?
The last thing you want to do is default on a federal student loan. It is a federal debt. It is no different than if you refuse to pay your taxes, and they can do pretty much the same things to you as if you didn't pay your taxes. And those things are nasty. The first thing they're going to do is turn you over to a collection agency, and they're going to be very aggressive coming after you, trying to get you to repay your loan. Next thing they're going to do is they're going to garnish your wages, and they're going to withhold your income tax refunds. They can also make it so that if you're in a job where you need to get a state license, they can make it so that you can't get licensed. Right. I mean, it is nasty what they can do to you. And so you need to avoid it at all costs. So what should you do? Well, the first thing you want to do is call the servicer of your loan. They've got opportunities to help you. They've got assistance they can give you. Next thing you need to do is, if you're really in trouble, you need to call an organization like Consumer Credit of Iowa, because they can help you and they can help get you back into a good position.
Steve McCullough is our guest, along with Tom Coates today, talking about Iowa student loans, and I hope you're listening. I mean, I'm thinking so much about my grandkids today and how I can help them with this kind of information. You can help someone in your life, too. We'll wrap this up when we come back with the biggest surprise of all, next.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live. Hey, psst. Let me let you in on a little secret. You ready? Always try to do business with people, not places. Especially if you seek honest Christian business people. And when it comes to my car, I really need to trust who's working on it. Now, my family is so blessed. A few years ago, we found a family-owned automobile repair shop that operates as a Christian business also. Open, honest, reliable, trustworthy. It's AMCO on Hickman Road in front of Kmart. And it's a family-owned Christian operating business. This family treats your car as if it was their car. Everything from oil changes to transmission repair and everything in between. So the next time you feel the need to be at peace with your choice of who you can trust with your car, give AMCO on Hickman a chance to serve you. And tell them Max sent you.
All across America, there are countless numbers of people struggling with addiction and other life-controlling issues. Probably someone you know and love. There is a way out. There is hope. Transformations Treatment Center in Delray Beach, Florida, has a unique approach to substance abuse treatment. Call now and ask about our Guaranteed Success program, or log on to transformationstreatment.com. Transformations. Change your life. Change your relationships. Transform your world.
Before the top, Salem Radio Network News, and then Michael Mudloff from Westkirk Presbyterian Church. And he's got True Blue coming up. Sorry, I went blank there because I heard, whenever I think of Michael Mudloff, I think of Calvinists because he's a Calvinist. Got a great joke for you. Okay. You want a faith joke?
Sure.
Won't knock Jesus. We're good. Ryan, you want to get in on this because I want to see if you think this is funny. He's smiling already. He's not going to think this is funny. So Calvinist dies and goes to heaven. Mm-hmm. Gets to the pearly gates, and there's two lines. Okay? Predestined, free will. So the guy says, well, I'm predestined. So he goes in the predestined line. Angel flies down and says, why are you in this line? He said, well, I chose it. Well, then you should be in the free will line. So he grumbly goes over and stands in the free will line. Angel comes down and says, why are you standing in this line? Somebody chose it for me. Guess you had to be there. See, if Ryan's laughing, he knows. Hey, Ryan, here's the biggest secret in college education. You don't have to pay for some of the classes they require you to take to graduate. Now, Ryan, you're a recent college graduate.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
This year.
Yep.
How many hours did you need to get your degree?
120 credit hours.
120 credited hours.
Yeah.
How many credited hours did you have to take compared to how many you tested out for?
Actual courses I took?
Yeah.
I took 7 plus 2.
14.
Yeah, which is...
Or the 7
times
plus
3,
9,
which is...
27.
About 27, yeah.
Okay, so you
27 credit hours I took as courses.
So out of 120, you took 27. Mm-hmm. Because you tested out of the classes.
Yep.
And how much money did that save you?
Tons. Actually, a lot, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. That's a great way to do it, right? Thank you, Ryan.
It's a great way to do it. The college level equivalency program are tests that you can take to prove that you have mastered the subject matter without taking the class. Now, maybe you had a really good class in high school. Maybe you studied it on your own. Maybe you went online and looked at some of the free lectures you can look at online now through what are called MOOCs. But the bottom line is you can sign up with your college to take these CLEP tests. And if you score a certain level, basically about a C level, 75%, then you get credit for the class.
Has it always been that way, or is that something recent?
It's always been that way. This program's been around since the early 80s, so it's available and it's out there. So one of the things everybody should do when they're sending their kids to college is sign them up for these tests. And not only that, the summer before they go to college, have them actually bone up on some of the subject matter before they go take the test to pass out of it.
Yeah, good. I mean, that's great advice. Now, again, it wasn't around when I was going to school, but it was for my kids, and I didn't know as much about it.
That's another well-kept secret is one that you've already referred to, and that is that you can take college classes while you're in high school in the state of Iowa, and you can take them for free. You can take them for free. It's part of the state contribution to education in the state. So my son's in high school in West Des Moines, and he's been taking classes that get DMAC credit. And those credits will transfer when he goes to Iowa State. Now, everybody knows, most people know about AP classes, where you can take accelerated program classes that you can take a test and you can get credit for that. And that's true, and you can and you should. Not only that, that helps with college admission too. They look at the number of AP classes you took because that signals to them that you can handle the rigor of college.
Right.
But you also get credit for that. So there are a lot of ways you can earn this college credit without having to pay the college for the credits.
No, that's a big deal, Mac. That's a big deal. If nothing else, they should have listened to the last few minutes for those two items, the testing out and the high school credits that are able to be gathered up for college while you're still there in high school at no cost. So that alone ought to save some people some significant money. The price of the admission of your show today.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you get what you pay for. How about this is an important question, but I don't like asking it. How many kids just don't get it? And it's about social stuff, and it's about just going to college, and classes aren't important. Going to classes aren't important. It's party, party, party. It's friends. That's where my boyfriend went, so I'm going to follow him.
Well, if you look at graduation rates, and Iowa's actually better than most states, and the colleges in our state are better than most. But if you look at 5- and 6-year graduation rates, you're talking 60 or 70%. That and less than that at some colleges. But if you think about a full 40% of the students starting never finish, and 40%. And you go back and you look at why that might happen, and on our parent student loan game plan, we come right out and tell them this is why bad things might happen for your student in college. Here are the things that typically happen. Some of it is just life happens. You have some people that get sick or their parents get sick. There are legitimate things that throw people off track. The things that really pull at my heartstrings are the things that are self-inflicted.
Yeah.
And that is, you really, really enjoy partying and want to have a really good time. Somebody told you it was supposed to be the best time of your life, and you're determined to make sure that that's the case for you, but you don't go to class, and bad things happen when you don't go to class.
Yeah.
And bad things happen when you don't do well on tests. Eventually, they don't let you come back to college when that happens.
Right.
And the whole point is, honestly, that's another thing I would tell people. This image of college, Animal House, you're going to have a good time, it is a lie. That is not why you're going to college.
Right.
You're going to college to better yourself and set yourself up for a good job after college.
Now, I don't know if this is true today, but it used to be that I would hear that if you go to Iowa State, you're looking for a husband or a wife. And if you're going to Iowa, you're going to party. Now, is that just silly that I should even say that because that's just non-important or doesn't apply?
I personally graduated from the University of Iowa, and my son graduated on Saturday from Iowa State University.
Good for you.
I can tell you that they're both fine institutions, and I would never say anything bad about either one.
But there's some truth there. Are you coming around to butt?
I'll tell you that I did personally witness some partying happening at the University of Iowa. I think my son would attest that he personally witnessed some partying going on at Iowa State University. Not that we partook in any of it, but I'm saying that it does happen.
But Iowa ranks right up there as far as one of the top party schools in the country when they do the ratings on an annual basis, which is something that has not been a badge of honor for the administration over the University of Iowa for years. Am I right?
Well, I'll just say this. It goes to my comment before about people need to remember what college is supposed to be all about. And it's not about drinking and partying. That's an image that's out there, but it is a lie. And it's a lie from the pit of hell because it's going to throw people way off track. There's nothing fun about getting arrested. There's nothing fun about having to explain to a future employer that, oh, I was just having too good of a time some night, and you've got to explain that in a job interview? Really?
Yeah.
Was that worth it that night?
Yeah.
Drunken moped riding or something?
And Steve, you have no idea how true that is. I mean, my wife is an HR director for a major company, $500 million company, and they're all over social media. They're all over your school records. They're all over your Twitter account. They're all over your criminal or even misdemeanor when they come to look at employees. And there are good people out there who aren't getting jobs. Thank you for being here today. I appreciate it. You need to come back again. Tom, nice to see you. We'll see you tomorrow for a special edition of Max World with Tom Hoefling, who is challenging Terry Branstad for the governor's job on the Republican side. Until we see you again, do me one favor, would you? Just one? Please? Just pray.